This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. And my guest today, I think she's been avoiding the maze, although life is a maze. So we don't really avoid it, but we find ways to tweak ourselves through it. In fact, this past weekend, I was in the maze. I hit a wall, and my poor husband, he paid the price for it because all I could do was say, "Oh, woe is me. Why do I feel this way?" And he just looked at me and he said, "And what would you tell one of your clients?" And it was like, oh, hey, I can get out of this. So, Simone, pronounce your last name for me.
Knego.
Knego. I almost didn't pronounce the K in it. You're an international speaker. You're an award-winning author. So tell us, when you were a little girl, did you think you'd be sitting across from me doing a podcast today?
No, absolutely not. Again, I mean, I don't even know when podcasting started, but definitely wasn't something on my realm. I started off as, in my working life, for college. I went to college for accounting. I have both a bachelor's and master's in accounting and realized pretty quickly that that was not where I wanted to be. And I changed my mind many times, and I'm a big believer that it's okay to change your mind. Went back to school to be a teacher, flipped houses for a while, went into medical sales. I've done a lot of things, have 6 children. And really, what I realized through some volunteer work is what I love is storytelling. And I had a fifth grade teacher who said to me that I was a horrible writer and I should never. And that was it. That was like the end of my writing at the time. And I wrote my first book in 2020, and I just finished my second book. And guess what? I'm not a horrible writer.
You know, I can relate to that. My paternal grandfather, my father, my two brothers um, are writers. They've always been writers. And um, my grandfather was more of a poetry writer. And every time I would try to write something, my father would look at it and he'd go, "Honey, leave the writing to the men in the family." And I believed I didn't have the ability. And even when I would write reports at school, my teachers would give me a C for effort. Okay. But it was like, "We've seen what your brothers have written. Why can't you?"
Mm.
And it wasn't until I wrote my father's eulogy that I actually started writing and realized I can do this. So I can sort of understand where you're coming from, that there are things that maybe you thought you wanted to do, but once you tried it, you realize that it really wasn't the right fit. And it's okay to keep changing. There's nothing wrong with that. So, how did you allow yourself to go from getting, your degrees in finance and then finding out, I don't even want to do this after I spent all that money and time?
So actually, the plan was I was going to be a doctor. My mom's a doctor. Retired now. My dad was a doctor. He passed away in 2019. My sister's a doctor. My husband's a doctor. The plan was I was going to be a doctor. And then came organic chemistry, and I failed it. And then I got a D in it the second time. And I'm like, okay, well, I think I'm not meant to be a doctor. And I wanted to be an actress. But my dad was like, as I pay for the bills, you're really good at math. You're going to do accounting. And that's what I did. I didn't really think twice. I just thought, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then I realized pretty quickly once I went out into the working world after 2 years in accounting, I was like, oh, this is not me. And, you know, you can always say hindsight is 2020. I look at my best friend from college and she stuck with it and she's a partner at one of the biggest accounting firms. And I think she loves what she does, but she definitely is very successful in it and has figured out how to make all the things work for her. It just wasn't the right choice for me. And I think sometimes we get really hard on ourselves when we make a decision and then we're like, oh, you didn't follow through, but that's just part of life
Yes.
that we we make choices, and sometimes they're not the right choices for us. Sometimes we make choices based on what other people want for us, and or it was just the choice in the moment. But I think it's a really good thing to be able to reflect and say, like, that doesn't affect my worth. That's just wasn't the right thing for me. So let me see how I can move forward.
And I'm hoping that young people, especially, hear this message, because I think it's important to know that what we might like when we are 16, 17, 18 years old is most likely not going to be what we're going to like 10 years later, 20 years later. I know I always wanted to go into communications and broadcasting, and my parents thought that was the most ridiculous thing I could ever do. Um, this was back in the 60s and early 70s, and there weren't a lot of women, on radio, on TV. And yet that's where I pictured myself. And my father said, I'm going to pay for college. You're going to
Yep.
go get a teaching degree. So you sort of went through the same thing. But I always knew inside of me what I wanted to do. And so I kept prepping myself, thinking maybe someday I can. And when podcasting became a thing, I didn't know the first thing about it, but I just jumped in and said, I'm going to do this. And people said to me, and why would anybody listen to you? And I said, well, we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah.
So you've had many changes in your life, but you've become a TED Talk, which I think is exciting and wonderful. And many of us dream about giving a TED Talk, but we're terrified of the fact of nobody wanting to be in our audience. So how did you get to the TED Talk stage?
I just thought I had a good idea, and exactly their ideas were spreading. And then I applied, and, I got a lot of no's, right? That's just part of it. But it really is about having the right fit. I've done two, and I'm actually doing a third one in September. And it's nice because I guess at first I thought, like, oh, this is so high pressure. But the high pressure is that you have to know it backwards and forwards, right? There's no confidence monitor. There isn't anything there. You have to have it inside your head. Not as easy as I get older and older, but for me, it was the idea that I could share something even different from what I was doing, right? I mean, my first talk, it was about finding your Kilimanjaro and climbing above self-doubt. I've learned a lot of things on how you should title things, because when people search, they need specific search words. And the second one was talking to your kids about bias. And that one was important to me because we have a multicultural family, and we definitely move forward differently than a true biological family. And so I think that was important for me to share that with the world. And then this one is going to be about self-respect, because it's interesting that the further I go through with the work that I'm doing, I realize that, we were taught to respect our elders, our peers, but I don't ever remember directly being taught to the most important person to respect is ourselves. And I feel like that's such a message that everyone needs to hear, younger people especially, but across the board in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, because it really wasn't something that was discussed. So,
Well, and I think, at least in my background, respecting yourself was more about being selfish.
mm,
And I remember a number of times saying to my parents certain things that I wanted to do. And my parents would look at me and go, that's selfish of you.
mm,
What about your brothers? Or what about this or that? And there was no good reason today for them to have said that back then, other than they just either couldn't accommodate me, or they just didn't have the belief system. And one of the things that I decided when I had my sons was never to say never, and to get them to tell me why, and let them fill in all the gaps. My oldest son, for many, many years, told us that he was going to be the first Jewish U.S. president. And he was in government. He did law school. He worked on campaigns. He was all set to do it until the last campaign he was on in 2000, I think, 8. He said, I don't want that life. That's not the life for me. And yet we never told him no. I shook in my boots some days thinking I would not make a good mother of a president. But we all have these abilities. And I think that's what this next talk really is about, is that you have an ability to be who you want to be. You're the only one who can create it. So where did you get so smart to know this?
So thank you for saying that. I've had some really amazing life experiences, some really difficult ones. And it took me a long time to realize how that shaped who I was in good and bad ways. So when I was in high school, I had an abusive boyfriend, and I stuffed that down for a very long time because what will other people think? That was kind of the motto at the time from my parents. And again, my parents are amazing parents, but it was just a different time period. And I didn't realize how much that affected how I moved forward. And it was in the moment where I finally realized, and I mean, it took a really long time to realize, but in 2015, I was invited to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I am not a climber. I have 12 steps in my house. I mean, and it was never a bucket list thing. But when I was invited to do it, I thought about it and said, you know what? This is something completely out of my wheelhouse, something completely out of my comfort zone. And I was really struggling at the time, thinking like, I don't know I feel like I have no value. And it didn't matter that I had 6 children. I just didn't see that I was making a difference in the world. And so that kind of turning point for me was in really pushing myself to see what I was capable of. And I'm not saying go out and climb a mountain tomorrow, but I think that we all have things that we could do where we don't even think about them. Trust me, how many people said, oh, that's selfish. You're leaving your family for 10 days. What if something happens to you on the mountain? I was like, that's not selfish. That's called self-care. And what a better example, I mean, for my kids to see that they can do whatever they want to do if they put in the work. So I think a lot of things over time, and honestly, my best teachers are my kids. I have and my husband, and we've been married for 32 years. I have a podcast with one of my daughters called Her Unshakeable Confidence, and we do really raw episodes where the other day she's like, I want to talk about the fact that your anxiety is giving me anxiety.
I love that.
And so we just have very open communication. And I think that has been really helpful for me because I didn't have that when I was younger. And I didn't really have, and I love the fact that I can say all these things to my kids and they feel comfortable to come talk to me about things that I would have never talked to my parents about. So I think there's a lot of things that have gotten me to where I am today. Again, some negative and some really positive. I mean, I have an amazing support system with my family, and I've realized how important it is to take risks so that we can see what we're capable of, because I think that we limit ourselves on a daily basis with the way we talk to ourselves, with the way we talk about ourselves. And I'm here to help other women break through that.
And it's interesting that we think that it's only women who are going through this. And one of the things that I learned specifically in the last year, I've gotten more male clients who are contacting me saying, I need somebody to talk to me. I need somebody to tell me I'm not crazy. And the first thing I'll tell them is, well, you got to tell yourself you're not crazy. You got to believe that, because if you believe that you are, it doesn't make any difference what anybody else says. But they're realizing too that maybe they didn't take the risks that they really wanted to over the years because they were taking care of family, or their parents or their siblings expected certain things out of them. I know for the first 55 years of my life, I lived by what other people wanted. And it was amazing that one morning I basically woke up and I said, I'm unhappy, whether my mother likes the word or not. I am depressed and I need help. And I'm in a situation that is not good for me. And it happened to be my work situation. It was making me so ill. And the risk I took was leaving a very lucrative position. I was the major breadwinner in the family. Not that my husband has ever been mean, but I was afraid. What was he going to say? Was he going to tell me, just hold on for a couple more years? And he didn't. Now, we've struggled since then, but that's okay. The depression has been taken care of. That's because we took chances.
Mm-hmm.
So when you decided you have this opportunity, even though you only count 12 steps in your house, you were going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro, which, I mean, I just can't imagine this massive undertaking. How much prep work did you have to do?
So when I was asked to do it, I only had 6 months to prepare. So typically people prepare a little bit longer. And, you know, there are some people that tried to do it without doing anything. And you don't realize that you can't make it up a mountain like Kilimanjaro with an oxygen tank. It takes way too long. And so a lot of people fail. Like I think it has like a 50% success rate. But if you prepare and you practice. So basically what I did was I started going to the gym every single day. I would be on the treadmill at full incline, walking very, very slow because it wasn't about racing to the top. It was putting, and really is symbolic of life, putting one foot in front of the other. And I wore, before masks were a thing, I would wear, it was called an elevation training mask, and I got the gorilla version. So, like, it's over my face. I look like a gorilla, and there's basically valves that you can adjust. And what it does is it simulates what it feels like at different elevations. So, obviously, you don't you don't experience that chemical change until you're actually on the mountain, but it helps build lung capacity because when you're trying to, it's like sucking air in through a straw, right? You have to work really hard to get that air in. So I would wear that when I would do boxing training, and I really committed to doing the things. I had had a couple of knee surgeries, so my knee was going to be an issue. It wasn't an issue on the way up, it was an issue on the way down where it just swelled like a balloon. But I just kept moving forward for it. Now, the most interesting part was that I didn't know anybody on the team. So there were 16 of us. We were raising money for the Live Strong Foundation. And I also didn't realize that not only was I going to be climbing with people I don't know, I was actually going to have a tent mate. And so we got there and I was like, oh, I'm sharing a room and then I'm sharing a tent. And she's an amazing human, like, really. So it worked out perfectly. But so there was not one part of it that was comfortable. And I think that was a big part of it, is that really putting ourselves in positions where oh yeah, I'm capable of this, instead of, oh, I can't do that. And that's the other thing I want to touch on real quick on this. But
Sure.
when I would talk to women about it, they would say, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, would you want to? No, I would never want to. Okay, well then those are your words, because as soon as you say I can't do that, you're limiting yourself, right? You're telling your brain that you're not capable of something, instead of saying not something I would ever want to do. Those are two totally different things that you're teaching yourself when you talk about things.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because about probably close to 10 years now, I was helping out at a 5K, and I made the comment, oh, I wish I could run like that. And somebody said, well, you know, you don't have to run at a 5K. You can walk if you want. And I said, oh, but I don't have the stamina. And she said the same thing to me. Do you want to get the stamina to do it? And I said, well, yeah. And she said, okay, I'm going to tell you how. And so she shared a program with me. And a year later, I walked the 5K. because I have a knee replacement on one side and I have a bar on the other leg. So running is not something that is going to be comfortable for me. And when I finished the 5K, after almost everybody else had basically gone home, I cheered for myself because I had done it.
Mm-hmm.
I did the work to get there. Now, since then, I have no desire to ever do another 5K, but I'm not afraid of trying new things. And I think that comes with when you can be confident inside and stop listening to everybody else around you. Because I know when I said I was going to first do it, my husband looked at me and said, right, you don't even like going for a walk around our cul-de-sac. And he was right. I didn't. But the thought of completing the 5K is what got me to do it. Once I completed it, I'll go on to something else. So let me ask you, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Would you climb another mountain?
So I have to have shoulder surgery next month. So, you know what? It's not out of realm, right? I don't know. I guess my answer is I don't know. We did the Inca Trail, which was actually really hard. We did that in 2019, and I really haven't done much since then. So I'm definitely probably in the worst shape of my life right now. I mean, I've been focusing a little bit too much on work. So, but that's okay because I know that if I want to do something, then I can go do it. But I got to get through this shoulder surgery first and then see. And I'm more realistic these days, right? I'm 53 and certain things hurt already. And, I'm not going to do something where I feel like, and not that that's old at all, but things that I would just say, oh, I'm going to train for a marathon and do a marathon in 6 weeks. I wouldn't do that anymore. I would definitely, whatever goal I choose, I make it far enough in advance so I can really prepare. I used to make very probably bad decisions when it came to that. And again, I had to have the knee surgery and just things that if I would have taken better care, I wouldn't be dealing with that now.
Right. Exactly. But, sometimes we have to make what I call those little mistakes so that we can do better things for ourselves in the future. And you talk about shoulder surgery. I had shoulder surgery in January. On Christmas Eve, I took a fall in my own house and I broke my shoulder.
Oof.
And, I heard all these horror stories that, Karen, you're going to be laid up for 6 months. It's going to take over a year to recover and whatever. And I just made the decision myself. I'm going to do everything I can to prove that wrong. And I've gotten there. I still don't have my full range of motion. Sometimes on rainy days in Cleveland, Ohio, I ache a little bit more. But I'm like you, it's like I think about what I can do and what I want to do, and I work towards that. And I think that's what I saw in your bio, that there are so many of us, men, women, young adults coming out of high school and college who are being told that there's certain things they can't do. You don't know until you try.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's two big things that I talk about now in my keynotes. One is confidence, and I say real confidence, which is respect yourself, embrace your failures, ask yourself what you want, and live without limits. That's the first thing that I really, and I think that confidence is such an important thing because a lot of people think that, well, you either have it or you don't. You build it like anything else. You build it. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not something that someone else deserves. It's really that self-belief and really honoring ourselves that leads to that. And the second thing has to do with leadership, which is, I call it kitchen table leadership, because we've been sold this narrow view that leadership has to have a title or you're the one in the boardroom. But leadership, it's the choices we make every day. And so many decisions that we make happen around the kitchen table. But the idea that every single one of us is a leader. And if we just started to understand that, then we would definitely go forward in the world differently, because leadership isn't meant for someone else. It is all of us. We are all leading every day with the decisions we make. And it's interesting because a lot of people just don't see themselves that way.
So you've talked about the fact you have 6 children, you're multicultural. A lot of people believe that we're born with certain instincts because of our culture.
Mm.
Now you're this, cohesive family. Do you find that you are like the United Nations, or are you more like what somebody would call a neurotypical family?
I think we're the United Nations. I know
Yeah.
I would say that neurotypical is few and far between with anybody I know, right? I mean,
Right.
um, my yeah, it's very interesting, even with my biological children, how different when we talk about nature versus nurture, and how different each and every one of them goes forward, how they go forward in the world, because and what they want to do with their lives. My oldest is an engineer. My next one is studying art conservation over in Wales. My
Uh,
next one is going to law school. My next one is studying business administration. Like so. And then I have two more. One just graduated and he's starting college this summer. And then I have one more and potentially could be an empty nester. But I do think that there's nothing typical about us. There's nothing normal about us. Like, I don't even like the word normal, but I feel like we kind of represent real life, right? There's no everybody is different. And when we try to put a label on something and say, "Oh, well, you're this or you're that," like we're going through our days the best that we can, living our best lives and trying to make a difference in the world.
you know, I love that because I have 2 sons, different dads. They are so much alike and yet so different.
Mm,
And they're 15 years apart. So there is a difference in their upbringing as well. But one of the things that I found was, even though I never thought of myself as a good mother, I'm realizing now I probably did some good things because both of my sons can have deep conversations with me, share things with me. I can share things with them as well. And I agree with you. I don't think there is a normal or a typical family anywhere. I mean, we can kid ourselves about that.
mm.
But I think when we allow our children to be who they want to be, that that is the best gift we can give to the world. And sometimes it's difficult. We see our kids going off and doing certain things. My one brother, he went to architectural school for 5 years. 2 weeks before his graduation, he walked out of school. He didn't want his degree.
Oh, wow.
My parents probably, I don't remember exactly the words they had in their mouth that day, but it was like, how did you waste your life? But he didn't, because he ended up going into music production and he's used his art all the way through. So was it a mistake? You know, Probably not. So you've written a couple of books. Tell us about the books so that our listeners can find them and read them and follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only one that's been published so far is called The Extraordinary UnOrdinary You. And that one is all about realizing what you're capable of and recognizing that the little things you do every day matter, because they do. And the second one, which will be coming out not until next February, but that one is called Real Confidence. And it's a simple guide to go from unsure to unshakable. And that has to do with my real method and lots of my own stories, but stories about other people too. The idea of failure, right? That we think of failure as a stop sign, right? And it's part of life, the mistakes that we make and things that happen to us, and that we have to continually move forward. So I'm excited for that one to come out. And yeah, I mean, again, if it, for anyone who's listening, the idea of that you can't do something because someone else told you you weren't good enough at it, or you told yourself like, oh, I didn't study that, I can't do it. It's so not true. Like if it's something you want to do, you can absolutely do it. You just need to put in the work.
And you have to decide to what degree you want to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, for many years, I I wanted to bake, I wanted to cook, I did all those, domestic chores because I really wanted to do it. And um, probably in the last 15 years, I just have no desire. And um, I've had people say to me, "What's wrong with you? You used to cook all the time. You used to make this and that." And it's like, but I don't want to do that anymore. I'm doing what I want to do now. And to me, the food is not as important. In the past, there was something about it. That was my creativity. So I agree with you. Whatever it is, try it out. If it doesn't fit, put it aside. There's always something that we can be good at that will make us happy and complete. So, Simone, tell me where my listeners can find you and follow you and hear your TED Talks.
So my website, SimoneKnego.com. I'm the only Simone Knego in the world at this point still, but it's SimoneKnego. And I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Yeah, if you search me, you will find me. And my book is anywhere that you can find books online. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, and then you can listen to our podcast.
Yeah,
So if you check out Her Unshakable Confidence, you can hear the fun conversations I have with my daughter. Also on my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. I send out a video and article every week about something that I think is important that is going on in life and how I can help other people.
that is wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us and enjoy the beautiful day down in Florida while I enjoy some rain up here in Ohio.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
great
much.
day. Thank you. Bye bye now.